Good morning. I am going to give it a couple minutes for some people to arrive, and then we will get started. I hope everyone is having a good morning. I have some fun stuff to do today. One of the things I'm going to do in a little while is I am going to use DooDah, which is the pattern that we're going to be using today, as a fill pattern. So if anyone has a pattern that you would like to see me use this in, if you just wanted to post it in the comments, that would be super helpful. Good morning, Karen. I've been waiting to do this one for a little while. It's a very, very simple pattern. It's almost deceptively simple. And good morning, Betty. Good morning, Lori. It's a deceptively simple pattern. Drawing it is, I find it to be incredibly relaxing, very, very soothing, and a great tangle for, really embracing the Zentangle practice to focus on your individual lines and really kind of just dive in. With that said, though, as simple as it is, you can do some really great stuff with this. Good morning, Karen. I am going to show you a couple examples, and then I am going to demo how we actually draw DooDah, and then I am going to show you some variations. So this is DooDah drawn twice, just kind of in a very, very simple composition here. I drew it fairly large. I tend to tangle really tiny, except when I am doing my lives, and then I really strive to make myself go big. Not only because it's easier to see on camera, but because that pushes me out of my creative rut, right? Which is a big part of why I do these. I think it's important, we all kind of have our go-to patterns, our mac and cheese patterns, our baked potato patterns, however you choose to think of them. But we draw them the way that we originally learned how to draw them, and we stick in that rut. I hate to use that word, but really that's what it is. We get stuck in a rut, and it doesn't mean it's not a beautiful way to draw a pattern, but it is a way to always have your artwork kind of stay in the same place. So by taking a pattern that we know, that we love, that maybe or even that we don't use that often because the way we learned to draw it wasn't comfortable for us. So I like to show the pattern. I like to teach the pattern, the official way. I say that in my little air quotes because, everyone learns things in different ways. CZTs all teach them different ways. Books tell them in different ways. But this is the way that it is originally showcased. That doesn't mean drawing them in other ways is wrong, and everyone kind of draws them with their own little bit of flair. But I want you to know the pattern itself, and then I'll show you how to kind of take it in some different ways. One of the things I love about this pattern is that it is a border pattern or a ribbon pattern, which means that you can use it any of the ways that you would normally use a ribbon or border pattern, or maybe some ways you haven't thought of before. I see that I have had a whole bunch of people join me. Flo, bonjour. My French is terrible. I only took a couple years in high school, and all I remember how to do is ask to go to the beach. But I'm very happy to have you here with me this morning. And Barbara, I see you are from Washington, where it's still all smoky. And Helene from Canada. Again, my French is terrible, but I can say bonjour. Let's see. So I'm going to dive in. I did say kind of right before everyone got here, I do want to use DooDah as a fill pattern in a little while. So if you have a pattern you'd like to see me use this in, by all means drop it in the comments so that I can do that in a little bit. So here I have taken DooDah and I have created little ribbons or borders on this floral pattern that I created, and I use DooDah to fill those in. So, you know, you might think when I say border, you might think that I'm going to talk about the outside, and yeah, I certainly can use it that way. In fact, that's exactly what I did here, but I didn't draw it straight, and I made it kind of curvy, and I added some embellishments, and then all of this is really, really skinny, really stretched out DooDah as well. So you can do some fun things without even really, without even really stretching your brain too much. We just kind of want to take it and go in a new and different direction. So that's two different ways of drawing DooDah right on one tile. I've drawn it wider spread. I've added a little bit of an embellishment. I don't have any hard straight lines in there. It's all kind of, wiggly and wonky. It's just a fun way to add it as a border. And then, if you've been to my lives before, you know that I love spirals. So I have drawn DooDah in a spiral with a little bit of rounding. So without further ado, I am going to push these ones to the side. I hope these give you an idea of some places you can go that I'm not going to tackle today during the live. And I'm going to start by showing you how we draw DooDah. The nice part is I can show you a lot of variations in a pretty short period of time this morning, because with that, in a fairly short period of time, because it's not a very complex tangle to draw. Sorry, I needed tea. It's still morning. So I drew my dots, and now I'm going to create my border. Again, I always draw my border nice and light in pencil. A lot of people, after they've been tangling for a while, don't draw a border anymore. I like it because it gives me that elegance of limits. I like knowing about where I'm going to stop. It helps me to plan for where I'm going. And I also like that outside edge. I think that it helps with my composition, and it gives me a really nice little border, little framework. Like, we mat our artwork for a reason, right? Okay, so DooDah. I'm going to draw this. So I drew this curved. I'm going to draw this one. I'm going to draw it straight, just because. It kind of gives us another little variation. So I'm slightly off center, not terribly so, but a little bit, and I drew a line from top to bottom of my tile. I'm gonna turn my tile a little bit. It helps you to keep my hand out of the way, and I'm gonna create a little aura. Kind of trying to keep it about the same size, but I'm not stressing over it. I'm not gonna overly tax my brain for it. I'm gonna leave some space, a good chunk of space actually, and I'm going to create another line, which is really just an aura of that first line. And then I'm going to add another little skinny aura. Okay, so now I have something that looks like a ribbon or a road, with very, very skinny shoulders for the road, but a road nonetheless, right? So now I'm going to add in, I like to draw mine this way. If you are very comfortable drawing horizontal lines, then that may be the way to go for you. But I find it easiest to draw with my tile, or with my road, in kind of a horizontal orientation. So I'm going to draw a line. about 2/3, maybe. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to come down about 1/3. And then I'm going to come back up here and draw my line. And this one I want to be just a touch longer. There we go. Okay. And I'm going to evenly space these. And I'm just going to alternate them. So I find this looks the best if I try and make them all the same length in each direction. And what you end up with is this really cool, like, I don't know, kind of, it looks like fabric trimming, or a zipper. It's got a really cool feel to it, and like I said, it's very, very versatile, and it's really simple to draw. I find it to be really relaxing to draw too. You can draw a ton of this with no real idea where you're going with it, and you will end up, I'm splitting my pen again. My poor pens. I'm brutal on my pens these days. There we go. So there is one row of DooDah. You see I have some more people who just joined me. Welcome. So this is how you draw a basic, the basic tangle DooDah, right? And here I did it, and I did them on a curve. So what I'm actually going to do right now is I'm going to do a second one, and I'm going to crisscross them like I did here, but again, I'm going to do it at a diagonal. I'm going to use the Halaba method here, so I'm going to draw my line till I come to there. I'm going to pick up my pen and hopscotch it over here, kind of like I'm playing, hopscotch or jump rope. I'm going to create my little teeny tiny aura. Leave some space. And aura again. So now I can come in, and again, I'm going to draw down, just like I did here. I'm going to draw down about 2/3, and then I'm going to come down about 1/3, 2/3, come down about 1/3, and come to that line. And I'm just going to repeat this pattern over and over. I'm not going to cross over any lines that are already here. I'm going to let things kind of peek behind, this other one right here. So I'm going to kind of pay attention. So if this one came to here, then the other one would be here. This one would be here. Then I'd have one probably right about here that would come up to about there. So this one would start there and finish there. And now look, I'm right back on track. This one, come down a little bit more. Right? So I'm just going to finish this all the way over, paying attention to my lines. There we go. And now to shade this, yes, Barbara, very much like a ruler, right? It's got some neat properties. So when I shade this, right, when I draw it just like this, the first thing I always like to do is I like to lay a little bit of graphite right inside of those, those skinny little auras, so that it gives it some depth. And I'm not doing anything fancy here. I'm just adding just the tiniest little bit of graphite. I'm going to pick up my tortillon, and I'm going to come in and I'm going to soften that. I'm not really dragging it around very much. I'm just kind of softening it, giving it that smoky edge. Turn it and do the same on the other. And now, because these are overlapping, I'm going to take my graphite and I'm going to lay it, I could lay it on either side, and I'm actually going to do both, or I could do it on one, but this time I want to lay it on both. Just where it crisscrosses, where one overlaps the other. And again, I'm just going to soften that, and it's going to give me a shadow. Okay, so I could leave this tile as it is, or I could use these like a string, right? Which is always a super fun way to use a pattern. And because I had said that I'm going to use it as a string, we're going to do exactly that. So I'm going to add in my dots, right? My border. And here, if I was, making just a tile and I didn't have any composition in mind, I would draw in a string. I would just kind of do some loops, or I would, draw a letter of the alphabet, something like that to create a string. But this morning I want to use this pattern as my string. So I'm not going to draw in a string with my pencil. I'm going to come right in with my pen, and I'm going to draw 2 little lines. And then, because I want to add that little aura, and you don't have to, this can be left off, which gives it a different look as well. So maybe I divide my tile up that way. Maybe I'm going to use like the Halaba method here. So this is actually almost like Halaba in what I'm doing, right? So I am adding these little ribbons, and I'm going to add one more here. Okay, so again, right now this is just Halaba. But what we wanted to do, remember, is I said we wanted to use DooDah as a string. And I wanted to show you a variation here. By placing them closer together, I get a much different look than if I had spaced them wider. This is one of those tangles that is so simple. There's not, it's not rocket science to draw it, right? But the simplest changes to it really gives us a completely different look and a completely different feel to our tiles. And sometimes that's what we want, right? Sometimes it's nice when our tangles and our tiles all have a nice consistent feel, but sometimes we really want something a little different, or something that kind of goes in a new and different direction. So, just changing up, sometimes using a different size or weight pen, sometimes using, making your strokes closer together or wider apart, or a different weight will allow you to add a whole lot of variation with very minimal effort and change. So here I am adding DooDah to these ribbons, and I'm creating a string in which to tangle further in all these other sections. And if you haven't been to one of my lives before, and I do see some new faces today, and if I haven't said good morning yet, good morning. I usually go back through the chat afterwards because it's hard for me to pay attention and draw at the same time, but I do like to glance over every so often. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the chat. But if you haven't been to this before, I do a pattern sheet later on today where I will put all of these tiles that I create. I'll finish them up after the live, and you can see where I went with them, and hopefully that gives you some more inspiration and some more ideas for your own artwork. These demos, I teach a lot of classes, And if you're not signed up for my newsletter, you can do that right from my page. But I teach a lot of classes where the goal is to do something specific. These lives are here for you. They are meant to hopefully give you some new ideas to just kind of take your Zentangle practice into its own new world. So I said I was going to use this as a string. So I'm not going to fill up this whole tile. I'll come back and do that later, but I just want to show you. So now that I've divided it, right, I can come in and I can fill in these other sections with different tangles. Right? So my tile, I'm using the whole tile. My string has now become an integrated part of my tangling work instead of just being a string, which is which is a fun way to kind of branch out as well. Okay, so and I'll come in and I'll fill those in later, and I'll probably fill them in with some simple tangles, because as you can see, this can definitely get a little busy. And if it does, remember I said sometimes what you can do is you can change up the weight of a pen or something that you use. So you can see that this anchors things just a little bit and changes the look and the feel, right? Okay, let's see here. So one of my favorite things to do with this pattern is to take it and to use it as a fill for another pattern. I had asked if anyone had any patterns that they wanted to see me use it in, but I didn't see any answers. So I'm gonna go with I'm gonna go really big, and I'm going to go with, let's see, some wonky Huggins, right? So I'm just gonna put in some random little dots. They're all kind of all over the place. I'm just kind of slapping them in here, and I'm using my fatter pen because I want this to I don't want this to be a main focus of my drawing today, so I want this to go kind of fast. And if you are interested in playing with Huggins, I did do a video on Huggins a couple weeks ago, so that is up on my page. So this is Huggins, and I have just kind of put a few of these in. There we go. Alright, so now I'm going to come back with my smaller pen, right, and I am going to, I did a lot of auras on the outside with these, but this time I'm going to come in and I'm going to do a slight inner aura on my Huggins, right, so that I can do DooDah as a fill, right? So that kind of creates this neat little texture in my other pattern. If that's too boring for you, or you want something a little more fun, you can add some embellishments. You can add, some little balls on the end of each of those, or some dots. You could, if it was around Valentine's Day or something, you could actually make those into little hearts. So there's a whole bunch of little ways to embellish even just the simplest So I'm going to do one more here, and then again I'll set this aside and I will come back to this pattern or to this tile before the end of the day and kind of finish it up for you. But again, I'm going to draw this in. I'm keeping them fairly evenly spaced. And you can vary the look by changing how far they come over as well. So if you only came over, a different amount of distance, you're going to get a different look too. So this time, instead of adding a little ball to it, maybe I'm going to add some dots. Bring that one over just a little bit more. And you can see, again, now it looks like two different patterns, and it's the same pattern with minor variations. I hope that makes sense to everybody. All right, and then I wanted to do another here. I want to talk about rounding this. So I like curvy lines. I'm going to draw this kind of big. I don't want it quite that big, so I'm going to do an inner aura this time. And remember, I said you can draw this without this aura. It's entirely up to you. I like it with the aura. I like how that breaks up the patterns and how it, changes things around, and it creates a little bit of neutral space for your eyes, especially if you're drawing a lot of this. It can be very busy. Tangling can get busy, so I always encourage people to kind of build in some of that resting space, whether it's all dark or whether it's all light. It all creates, a different look. So I've drawn this curved one right here, my curved ribbon, my curved road, however you choose to think about it, my curved border. I'm just going to add in, I'm going to go, let's see, I'm going to go fairly wide with these. Okay, so I've got these nice wide little marks, and it's nice and crisp and simple. But what if I add a little bit of rounding to these? Okay, so all I'm doing is kind of cutting off that corner. So I'm just adding a tiny little bit of black on each of these edges, right? So it's almost like a little tiny Y shape, right? Like a little triangle built in there, only more curved. I'm just adding that little tiny bit of black, and it changes the look completely. Now it looks more curvy, more like you took a big balloon and you folded it all up and stuffed it in a pipe. I don't know. So you could shade this in a different way too if you wanted to. So you could add some, so you could add your graphite in a slightly different spot instead of just along the inside. And by doing that, I like to add it. I like to add it along that border as well. But you end up with a completely different look than we had just a minute ago, and all we did was add a couple of little darker points. So that gives us, yet another variation with very minimal, changes. All right, so there's that one. I talked about, using it as a border, right? So we could use this, you know, borders are fun. I enjoy borders. So we're going to do a couple. I'm going to add, all I did was aura this line that was right here and build that in. So now I'm going to do, let's see, we can do this in a different way. So maybe I will grab my bigger pen and I'm going to, because it's a little wider, and I'm going to add more of these, but I'm going to do them closer together. And this time I'm not going to round this one. Okay. And you can see that looks really, really different. So maybe now I'm going to add, pick up my little pen here, maybe I'm just going to add some little pen flicks. At the end of each of my little stems. This doesn't really have a name that I know of. I just like to do it as a little variation. And I could have done this with my fatter pen too, but I find that I get better control with my smaller pen. And then I'll turn it, and I'll do them on the other side too. And it looks like a completely different pattern. You know, my big thing here is don't be afraid to try something new. You know, if you've used it in another pattern, if you've seen somebody do it, try it. It's just paper and pen, and there's no, you know, there's no great commitment to this. It's a small piece of paper. That's one of the reasons that it's so great to tangle. We're working with a small area. You aren't tied to this piece for any, you know, great length of time. Let's see. So this is turning out to be kind of a fun little tile. So I'm going to do one more here. I'm going to go up here, and I just auraed this one, right? And I'm going to add another skinny little aura there. And now I am going to come in and I am going to do, let's see, I'm not going to go quite as far apart as these or quite as close as these. So I'm just going to go like this. And I didn't go quite as far down as I did on some of them, but I could have. But I did want there to be some more room because I'm going to come in and I am going to add a rectangle off to the side. On some of these, right? Let's see. Yeah. So I'm just paying attention to which, you know, I always do the top ones first and then I do the bottoms. And this one I think looks like piano keys. And I could come in and I could color these ones in dark. And then if I wanted to, and I may change my mind later, I could, or, you know, I'm going to leave these white, but I could change my mind later and I could come back and I could color those in black if I wanted to. So, some new fun ideas there for you. I hope that you have not necessarily thought of those before, or maybe you have. And, you know, again, this one I'm going to add some heavy shading. So I'm just adding slightly darker graphite. I'm going to soften that. I need a new tortillon too, but this one will work for now so that I get a nice little shadow in there. And remember, it's border tangles, so you can do these in any way you might use border tangles. Okay. Let's see here. What else did I want to show you? I had a couple more ideas. But we are kind of running out of time. I don't like to keep you all morning on Saturday mornings. I know everybody has a million things to do and a million, you know, other ways to spend your day, but I do appreciate you taking some time and spending time with me on Saturday mornings. I'm here every week at 11:30. That's Eastern. I do also keep my videos up indefinitely. I may eventually move them over to my website, which is whimsybykelly.com, simply because Facebook changes stuff around and algorithms, and I don't know how long they'll let me keep them up. But for now, they're up indefinitely, and there will never be a charge for these videos. Let's see, I wanted to do one more, just because I think it's a cool variation. Let's see. And I can show you a couple different things by doing this. So I'm going to do this one without the skinny little auras. Okay. So I'm adding in, so here's one, here's another, and then I'm going to do a third, and they're not exactly even, but they're close enough. Okay, I'm going to make a grid. And again, I didn't put, you know, we don't need to use rulers. We don't need to use anything like that. But if you notice right now, it's close enough. I mean, if you look at this, you're not going to be like, oh, this one's a little closer to here. It's fine. I can now come in and I can do DooDah in all of these little different spaces, right? So what if instead, I'm just going to leave a little dot. If in all these little boxes, I come in later and I color them in solid, right? Just to change things up a little bit. And then this time, instead of drawing lines, I'm drawing some skinny little rectangles. But I'm doing it exactly the same way that I did DooDah. Because it is DooDah. It's just, you know, instead of straight lines, it's little rectangles. So this is going to give me a more robust, complex kind of pattern. And this, you know, when you're drawing these in, you can really pay attention to making the tops of your rectangles straight. Or if you wanted a different variation, you could come in and you could make them, you know, at angles. So I've got them straight across here, but really you could draw them so that they were something like this as well, adding even more interest and more dimensions. Okay, so just some neat ideas there, right? So something fun and just really like changing it up. Somebody asked me the other day if I plan these all out before I do them, and I do a little bit. I always try and create a couple that are a little more complicated that I know I won't have time to do and finish on screen without keeping you here for hours. But like this one, it probably only took me 20 minutes last night, but that's 20 minutes that I can't be showing you other things. So I wanted you to see this pattern, but and hopefully this will spark an idea for you to go and play with it. And once you've seen how I draw it and how I play with it, it's fairly obvious how you would do it in a spiral. And the same with this one. This is just a basic petal, almost like a flux shape, and then I did a little aura that I came in with my DooDah. And then this one I just was kind of playing with to see, some different variations. What I like about this one is this is DooDah, this is a border, and let me grab a bigger pen right now. But there's nothing stopping me from using this as a background, right? So maybe I want to add some little orbs, some black pearls on here, right? And I could have done this with petals or mukas, muka, or maybe I will add, I know what I want to add in a minute. But so now I've added these on here, right? To just kind of take this in yet a different direction. Add a little puddle of graphite there. And now they look like they're sitting on this pattern. So it's just a completely different look. I can come in and I could add, some fescue. And again, now there's a ton of interest in a way that wasn't there before. Okay? So you can see how, just these, DooDah doesn't seem like it's a super exciting pattern, but there's so much that you can do with it. And that really takes, this into a different dimension than it was, right? So getting back to the question, do I plan this? A little bit, but not a lot. I usually come up with a couple of things that I want to show you. And I usually make like little notes right here. You can see right here the one that I'm showing you now. But I knew I wanted to show you rounded, and having it as a grid is something that's kind of cool. I wanted to demonstrate how you could use it as a background. But a lot of what I do, I come up with on the fly, because I just look at it and I think, okay, what can we do with this that might be fun? And that's how I want you to approach your tangling. I read in a group that I'm in yesterday, actually, someone who had said that their strings felt like prisons. And I really, I kind of wanted to reach out and hug that person and say that, it's just a guideline. We have, these rules in Zentangle, but they're there to teach you the methods. Once you've learned them, you can break all the rules that you want. That's, that's kind of the beauty of this, right? Taking it and embracing your own creativity and running with it in a million cool, fun, shiny, fancy directions. And I really hope that these little mini lessons that I do on Saturdays help you to do that and to realize that it's okay to do your own thing and to take a pattern and to make it yours. There are so many patterns out there, and there's so many that I ignored for a long time because either I didn't like the way that I learned to draw them, or I didn't like the way that they looked when they were done. And I always thought that I had to draw them the same way. Well, I shouldn't say I always thought that, but for a long time I thought that, this is how you draw it. And then I realized, well, what if I didn't? What if I drew it in a different, more fun way? What if I drew it more in a more me way? And so I'm hoping you will do that too. Like I said, I'm not gonna finish this one. I'm gonna do a couple more little, I'm going to do this section, and then I'm going to color in a couple of those little spaces that I want to make black. And, I could come in and I could add a pattern in all of these too, or I could color it in, or I could just leave it like it is. I'm probably just going to leave this one like it is. But you could actually put DooDah inside this DooDah, and it would be like DooDahception. So, anyway, I'm just going to color this in. And I'm going pretty fast here because I am going to wrap this up. I'm going to come back with my graphic pen later and I'll finish coloring all these in for you. And my pattern sheet will be up here, and it will be up on Instagram so that you can look at it and keep it handy as a reference. And I hope that you enjoyed this little exploration this morning, and that I hope it gives you some ideas, and that you play with this. And maybe it's one you didn't play with very often, or maybe it's one you use all the time. And my hope is just that you do use it, that you take these ideas that I just gave you and you apply them to your own work. And even if you're not using them with DooDah, if maybe you take it and you use it with another border pattern, maybe you never thought about taking a border pattern before and putting it around the petals of a flower. Or maybe you never thought about putting a border pattern in a spiral or a grid. So go have fun, make beautiful art, use it to calm and relax yourself, and I hope I see you next Saturday. And if you are interested in other classes on various things, you can find all my classes on my website, Whimsy by Kelly, under the Classes tab. And so I guess with that, have a wonderful weekend, and I will see you all next week.